Seltzer Kings
podcasts.
Hello, Seltzer Kings. Before we get to your episode, I just wanted to mention our newsletter. It is an all-access pass featuring exclusive content and behind-the-scenes stories from across the network. You'll find episode drops, live show announcements, exclusive merch, giveaways, listener shoutouts, and the occasional surprise. And don't forget, every episode features a one-on-one interview with some of your favorite Seltzer Kings podcasters. Check it out at seltzerkings.com/newsletter. Subscribe for all the updates every month in your inbox.
How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
Real people making bold moves. Unforgettable journeys into life's next chapter. This is the Second Act Podcast.
Every day is a new chance. Mindset on a new path. Anything is possible. Any limit I surpass. Everything is in my grasp. I got tunnel vision with a pickaxe. Life is more fun when you live like there's no strings attached.
Welcome, everyone, back to the Second Act. Go to secondactmovement.com if you want to check out the latest episodes. Collins will be up there. It's an incredible story, and we're about to introduce him. So John and I are super excited to introduce Collin Strachan today, who's the co-founder of Every Mile Creative, which is Alaska's premier film and photography production company specializing in adventure storytelling. His journey began in 2017 when he left a corporate marketing role in Dallas to pursue his passion for photography, adventure, and storytelling. In 2019, Collin and his wife, Kendall, officially launched Every Mile Creative, setting out to capture stunning visuals that bring the spirit of exploration to life. If you look at any of his work, you will see that to be the truth.
It's amazing.
Embracing a nomadic, off-grid lifestyle, they have lived full-time in an Airstream, allowing them to immerse themselves in some of the most remote and breathtaking landscapes on Earth. Over the years, they've honed their craft, gaining deep local knowledge, building strong ties with pilots and guides, and mastering Alaska's challenging terrain. Their work blends storytelling, brand strategy, and top-tier production, creating compelling content for brands, TV, and documentaries. With a human-first, story-driven approach, Collin and his team craft visual narratives that inspire adventure, connection, and appreciation for the wild. Driven by resilience, adaptability, and creative excellence, he continues to push the limits of adventure, filmmaking, and photography. Welcome, Collin.
Thank you.
Welcome.
What an introduction. It's nice to meet you guys.
And for the people not watching online, he is in his car, probably in the middle of the wilderness. He said, expect there to be helicopter landing soon. So, if we get interrupted, that is an appropriate interruption.
Yeah.
But man, welcome, Collin.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm sitting in my truck here up at this little lodge, kind of in the middle of nowhere, close to this 27-mile long glacier that we shoot on a lot. And yeah, the owner of this lodge is a good friend and is our helicopter pilot. So we've got our Airstream up here, and he's got some good Wi-Fi. So I'm just like out here getting work done. And because my son is going down for a nap soon in the Airstream.
Oh,
that can't be on a podcast.
Your wife and the little one all bunkered in there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. No, it's tight, but we've got, the biggest state as our backyard. So not a lot of square footage, but like millions of square acres is our yard. So it forces us outside, which is ideal.
How old is your son, Collin?
He's 19 months.
Okay.
Yep.
So, I mean, this whole thing, I mean, I'm looking at dates here. I mean, the move, the marriage, the kid, it's all, I don't want to say new, but I mean, you got a couple of years on those things, and it probably still feels a little bit new, huh?
Yeah, not really. I recognize that 7 years, like when you zoom out or you're looking back on it, it's like not that long. And it's interesting how many entrepreneurs I've connected with who really kind of took 5 to 7 years to find their stride.
Sure.
And I imagine that 30 years from now, looking back, that'll be a little more compressed. But we have been like busting our butts to make this happen. And so, no, it does not feel new to be, 5 or 7 years in, especially, I think we'll get into this being the second act, coming out of some of the crazy stuff that I grew up with. But be into, creating this business and this idea and a family and all of that. Sometimes it feels like a blink, and then sometimes it feels like, oh my gosh, I've been, you know, doing this for I've been struggling, to accomplish something for 30 years or whatever. So, but yeah, when you zoom out, yeah, it's kind of new, and we iterate quickly and we make decisions
Sure.
quickly, and we said, yeah, we're going to Alaska, and we win. We said, yeah, we're starting a family, and we went for it. And so yeah, I don't know. I hope this ages well. I hope I look back on this time and go, yep, it was quicker than you thought, but also you were on the right track.
Well, at least, given your experience and your passions, at least it'll all be documented in photographs and videos. So
Yes.
if you don't like it, you can turn around and watch something else. But
Yep.
that's
I
awesome.
have high confidence you're not going to regret the
Yeah.
journey that you are on. And I don't
Yeah,
know
so far so good.
if it's by design or by circumstance or some combination of the two, but I look forward to getting into that. But before we do, we would like to just roll back the clock a little bit, because you had alluded to this being a slightly different life than maybe what you grew up with. So why don't we start there and then take it from there?
Sure. So we'll roll the clock all the way back. So I grew up, when I was born, my mom is a surgeon. She was in her, surgery residency. And then my dad had been in the organ transplant space. So he was an RN, but he's, leading all these teams and kind of flying into, he was one of the first ones to bring organ transplants out of like just the Mayo Clinic and these huge facilities, and
Wow.
like in the Appalachian Mountains, flying in and out of these little hospitals and finding people who had rolled their tractor or whatever and were like brain dead, heart beating, and who could become donors, and getting a heart and then hopping on a plane or whatever. So he like all of a sudden became a stay-at-home dad, and my mom was in her residency, and they had like fantastic intentions, but I think it wasn't really the best fit. So pretty like tumultuous childhood with that. And then I had kind of starting around first grade, some really, really crazy health issues that we thought by the time I was 16, we didn't know if I was going to make it to 20. We were confident that I was going to be blind by 20, but I had just aggressive systemic autoimmune issues where just like across my entire body, I had really, really bad arthritis. I had this eye condition called uveitis, where I was just like seeing degradation of systems across my body, and was, behind in school and not able to keep up with friends and overweight. And it's weird because this ebbs and flows. I would have flares, and then I would be kind of a normal boy. So mom, bought a ranch in Texas, and we grew up on a couple hundred acres. So I had these like really crazy, awesome moments where I had this mom who invested everything into us and saw, kind of gave me this idea that I could do anything. And I had dirt bikes and stuff like this. And then I, had these moments where I'm basically bedridden for a week. I had this issue with glands where I would wake up and my eyes would be like so dry that they were like scales. I would like put drops in to open my eyes, or I couldn't get out of bed because the
Jeez.
pain from the arthritis was so bad or whatever. So crazy stuff like that. So sometimes there were a couple of things. One, home kind of settled out and I got a little into a better, emotional environment. Two, I really figured out that, fitness and nutrition are incredibly important when it comes to these inflammatory things. And so I got away from, a lot of the sugar and different things like that I was consuming that were harming me. And then sometimes with people that have these juvenile, inflammatory diseases, they will go into remission around 18. And so kind of a mix of circumstances between good luck and, taking responsibility for my life and my body. I got to keep my vision and to
Amazing.
see my health be better, and to become way more active, and to be able to run and climb mountains and hike and all these different things that we do now. So, I think part of what I'm doing now, and part of why I went into a corporate job out of college that paid significantly better than most people coming out of, and immediately felt out of place, is I was like, man, like this is kind of my one chance, and I already feel like I'm on my second chance, because I came really tangibly close to feeling like this was it. And, it took me a little while to get my bearings in my 20s, because I never thought past that time. I never, envisioned myself past that age. And I had to learn how to do that, and to kind of really settle. I had to develop a lot of emotional awareness and all of this, and emotional intelligence and self-awareness, and kind of settle into this path that I just had this strong drive for, like, man, if this is like my chance, I got to do something that allows me to live this life well. And so So yeah, 2017, I'm at this corporate job. Kendall is at that time girlfriend to become wife, was a neonatal RN at a large hospital in Fort Worth, and we're both doing our thing. But I was just like, man, like it started to happen that on the weekends I would need to come in, and they pay or whatever, but just like the creep on lifestyle, with working at an agency happened, and I was just like, this is not for me. And I was freelancing. I was doing weddings and photo video stuff on the side, and I'm coming in on evenings and weekends and matching my paycheck with, a quarter of the hours that I'm giving to this company. I'm like, this is hold up. So I jumped without really a financial net, without really a plan, without a 6-month pipeline or
I
whatever it
love it.
is. I was just like, I'm jumping. And so that's kind of a theme for us
Yeah.
is we just jump. And sometimes I can't recommend it, but then I see people who are, they're kind of believe in the certainty of a W-2 or the company or savings. And I'm like, sometimes I can't recommend that you jump, but I also don't think you're going to do it unless you do. So yeah, I jumped and started, just doing contract photo video work around Dallas from the network. That agency, I left on really good terms and finished out well. And so they contracted with me for a while. But then we got this idea that we wanted to travel. Kendall was like, hey, I'm an RN. I can do travel nursing. So we make this one weekend trip up to kind of the LA area. And for the first time, we're on the West Coast, and a couple kids who had been in Texas and Philadelphia see California's beaches and all this type of stuff. And we're like, yep, I'm hooked. So we came out to California on a nursing contract,
Nice.
then bought an Airstream. And we're like, oh, we're going to do this in the Airstream. Went out to Utah. And in the midst of all that, because we're in the outdoors, I'm looking around and going, there's a lot of people doing like the influencer thing. And now there's
Yeah.
a trillion people doing this. But at the time, less people creating just content, commercial focus, like agency type of content in the outdoors that these brands can go and use. They've got to have an internal team, whatever. So we just started shooting content for these campaigns for largely outdoor gear brands traveling around. And like I said, this feels like a lifetime ago. This was 2019. This is 2018, 2020, whatever. So it's been a few years, I realize. And Kendall had a nursing contract fall through when we were in Utah. So we were like, we jumped again. We were like, let's just go all in. We're both going to go all in on the content creation business in the outdoors. And, it was mostly focused on commercial photography at the time, but that's what we chose to do. Traveled around the Southwest for a bit, but we just kept heading north, and we found ourselves in Montana and Wyoming and Washington. And we said, why don't we go to Alaska? So we drove to Alaska amidst all the COVID craziness. We had to like bluff our way through the Canadian border. They gave us a paper that said, like, if you don't get out of Canada in 4 days, we're going to put a warrant out for your arrest. We're going to deport you,
Jeez.
whatever. So we had to book it across Canada to Alaska. And we get here, and it ended up being the best thing possible for our business, because all of a sudden we've got this, really, really clear niche that no one else is doing.
It's awesome.
This epic content from Alaska, largely working in the outdoor gear space. But now we have, kind of grown to being, I say a full service production company, but it's like a specialist production company that's Alaska focused, that creates really like epic standout content for not just outdoor gear brands now, but I'm up here. I'm going to go shoot for Dude Wipes. I'm putting a toilet on a helicopter and doing
Nice.
an ice cave shoot for Dude Wipes today. And then I've been shooting for the last few days for a software company, because we're making fun of one of their competitors that's super slow and saying, bring your finances out of the ice age. Like,
Oh,
we're
nice.
just coming up with really cool, epic campaigns across all of these industries that have the purple cow effect, that make people go, what the heck is going on here? They stand out, they're funny. And so yeah, that's where we've landed. And it's been this whole journey of like grit and determination and making insane jumps forward. But it's worked out so far. So there's, 30 plus years in a nutshell. Where do you want to land?
I have 100 questions right now, Collin.
Let's do it.
One though, Michael, we should do a campaign. Says, I don't know, thaw out your second act, or thaw out your passions with the second act. There you go.
Yeah, I'd have to spend a little more time on it, but we could definitely come up with something good.
So, Collin, let me ask you this. So when you're in corporate marketing, are you doing some of these things, or was it on the finance side, or was there a tie-in between this and that?
Oh, a little bit. I
Okay.
was at an agency where the biggest clients were like, interior design and office furniture and stuff like that. And so like we packaged up a brand that made glass dry erase boards for, a sale. And so the founders had a really big exit. So, we did a total rebrand for the, private equity, that type of thing when you do that. And then, kind of traveled around and shop for those things. And then those people that had to exit had a few other projects. So we worked with their investing, firm that they opened up, and the private equity thing and, just like local Dallas type of stuff. So yes, I was in the like brand and multimedia space, but there wasn't a lot of super out of the box type of thinking. And frankly, like, Dude Wipes and Liquid Death and some of these other people who are like totally breaking up and marketing Mr. Beast, like they hadn't really hit in the market and proven it so much. So we were still kind of in like the 2010s, like keyword laden SEO, talk about the product type of thing. We were doing good stuff, and that agency is doing fantastic. They've taken on the Mavs. They've launched a company actually based off their own experience. Like great place, great people, loved them, doing really good work. They've done some work like around F1 and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's cool. But so yeah, I was in like multimedia content and design and stuff like that. But no, it's been like an iterative process to get to where we are now. Largely what I have learned is just because I haven't been in the influencer side, because I have been working with, you know, 10, 100 million, billion-dollar brands in the performance marketing and, consumer product good type of space. I've learned a lot about, what type of content and what type of thought performs and how to fill campaigns with great content. And it's just learning on the fly with my clients.
Colin, just to roll back things a bit. So, as the childhood health issues established an acute sense of mindfulness for you, like being present, being in the moment, because you don't know in a couple years if you can see or will be alive, right? Did I get that right?
They laid the groundwork for that. What they did was actually established 15 years of like running around craziness, thinking you need to grab whatever you can out
Yeah.
of life. And then finally, late 20s, I realized that it's just a miserable way to live, being constantly going, how do I grab this moment? How do I want more? So, no, I had a very, very external locus, as it were, for kind of my meaning and what I was doing because I hadn't thought through it very well. And I was kind of making myself so miserable with that I had to kind of rediscover how to live in the moment and develop mindfulness to kind of grow up. So
Okay.
it kept me immature for quite a while. So yeah, I didn't accomplish much of import in my 20s.
And was there more to it than the health issues? Like, what was your driver, your why to basically taking on this adventure and being patient enough for the adventure to manifest into you landing in Alaska and building a business around the last frontier of the United States?
That is a really good question. Charlie Munger says never to underestimate a man who overestimates himself. I listened to the Founders podcast a lot, and that
Okay.
was one I heard yesterday. And I was like, I love to overestimate myself. So,
Yep.
along the way, both my wife and I think a couple things. I think once we realized that kind of like we really come alive in these environments. If we weren't in Alaska, if Alaska didn't exist, then we'd be in Utah and we'd be in the Tetons and we'd go to Iceland, whatever it is. But this has become our home and we just love it here. But yeah, it just became really clear to us like after a few years in the Dallas area where we had to drive 8 hours to see the desert, for goodness sake, it just didn't work for us. So we really came alive, and then we just were crazy enough to believe that we could create something for ourselves. Out here, I've always had a camera in hand. I've always naturally like if I've created opportunity economically for myself, it's been around creation.
Okay.
So I dabbled in music and sound and all these different kind of things. But yeah, I think with the agency background and just realizing, yeah, there's a product to sell and you gotta capture people's attention to do that. That's what I saw. So there was maybe some patience, but there was just this real like hard-headed, I'm not gonna go back into an office
Yep.
somewhere for
Yep.
the most of like we
Yeah.
tasted freedom and we're so hooked on it that we've just been like, we're gonna figure this out. And I've even like I've got a friend who makes a ton of money welding and repairing ships and doing oil and stuff like and I've just been like, I'm gonna go learn to weld and do something like just to keep myself in these environments if this whole thing falls apart. Like I'm gonna work, but I'm not gonna go back in and sell my soul to something that's not meaningful for me. And it has worked. And then yeah, I don't know. I just see people just create wild success with the craziest ideas. And then I go and I read like 100 different books on sales and they all say the opposite stuff. And I've just been like, you know what really matters? Like you got to find the thing that works for you, but then you got to show up
Yep.
and be real and be genuine
Yep.
and just absolutely bust butt and just try to, you got to niche down, but then you just got to try to be fantastic at what you do and figure out how to create value for the people that you serve. So I saw that we were creating value for our clients all the way along the way. I saw that other people are making lives for themselves in all kinds of different creative pursuits. And I just believed that there was, a little corner of the market for us. We believe that relentlessly.
So, Collin, let me get this straight. You're in Utah, you're inching your way up north. What is that conversation with you and your wife, Kendall, where you're like, hey, let's go to Alaska, the farthest place we can go, and let's see if we can make this work? Is that something that it's an epiphany, or do you kind of work through it to where you realize that there's just so much opportunity out there? What is that like?
Yeah, so it's just funny. I would recommend to no one that you follow our path. But so when we started, when we really we started doing the off-grid thing in the Airstream because we had a successful launch into the outdoor market in 2019. People signed up. We had a full pipeline in 2020. We're going to rock this. And on March 10th or whatever, 2020, it evaporates. It's gone. So we're stuck. We had actually come to Kendall's parents' place to do some work on the Airstream to renovate it. And we end up quarantining with them. And then we head out west and we just couldn't afford RV parks or whatever. So Kendall was like, these people go to public lands and just set up there. So we're like, we're going to do that. And so we start and we had fun and we just start running around in Utah and Wyoming. And there's places in the desert in California and Nevada or whatever. And so, part of this is we're up in the mountains and then we sit down and I've still got some of the old, corporate explainer videos and stuff I'm doing for healthcare and from the Dallas world that keeps us going. And then we're getting contracts because in 2020 now travel ramped back up, but then it's up and down. And so we'll have some cash come in, we'll have it not. And so when it comes in, we go to do the next thing. So we went and we took 4 attempts to do the mountaineering route on Mount Whitney. So we're peat bagging for a bit. And okay, we climbed Mount Whitney. Let's go to the Tetons and let's climb the middle Teton. I don't think we tried the Grand, but so we're coming back from a climb attempt and, Kendall is just what if we go to Alaska? And I was just well, let's go to Alaska. So we sat down and somehow the next step is we're in Montana. We decided we need to cross through Montana. And so we just went and sat down in Montana for 2 weeks and just emailed every single brand, whatever. It was we're going to Alaska. We're going to create Alaska content. We're going to do glaciers. We're going to do mountains. We're going to paddle iceberg lakes. Do you want your gear shot? Everybody's yeah. So it was just totally off the cuff, but largely because we had nothing to lose because we had already lost it all by quitting our jobs and starting a business that then evaporated and had to be rebuilt in 2020. So yeah, it was kind of just this is fun. Why don't we go north? And I take there's moments where she says something and my heart just kind of goes that wasn't on a whim, follow that one. And so yeah, Kendall said it. I remember where we were halfway between Jackson Hole and the middle of nowhere in Wyoming, where we're going around this bend. We were listening to Taylor Swift's Folklore album because that had come out and gone viral at the time, and in the background. And so all this, it's a moment to me, but there was no strategy. It was just a yeah.
We've had other guests mention you have to almost be delusional in some ways in the direction you want to go, and you face what I like to call the captain's quandary, where you got this complex, difficult situation. You don't see the shore anymore, and you just got to make a decision and go with it. And that's what you're doing. It's awesome.
We do strategize more now. We budget now. We try to come up with plans to, make sure that our clients' content is going to work for them. Not everything is just totally, from the hip.
Well, you got a little one now, so
Yeah. We have plans for the little one. We've got another one on the way, actually.
Oh, congrats.
So yeah, thank you. So it's exciting, but there's still that tolerance for risk there that I think kind of is what makes great entrepreneurs. We'll see if 100%. We're great entrepreneurs or not. I hope so, but call me in 10 years, I'll tell you.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Collin, I love the COVID years, right? It was so restrictive for so many people, and so many people went inside and stopped their normal everyday life and buckled down to stay safe. You guys are doing the opposite, right? You're going out, you're pushing out, you're expanding your borders and your boundaries. And it created, I would say, a phenomenal opportunity for you guys because you had to leave what was comfortable. You lose those deals that you had in the pipeline, but all of a sudden it forces you north, it forces you to Alaska. And then you're able to reach out to those outdoor companies and establish your niche, which was a step to where you are now. And so, I mean, what an amazing positive spin on, those 2 years where not a lot of great things came from it, but you guys turned it around.
Yeah, there's these moments of adversity, and I saw a bumper sticker that, the hard times create great people and all of that. And so yeah, there was a refining and almost like a, we're feeling good right now. I'm hoping, I had a post go very viral that I wrote about this, that I don't fully lose touch with that hunger. Like Dwayne Johnson named his production company $7 production because, he's worth what, hundreds of millions, maybe $1 billion now. But there was a moment where he had $7 in his pocket and he just he never forgets that hunger. And there was a moment where we had $13 in our pocket. And no pipeline, and we went and we just dug in and made it happen. And
That's
so
awesome.
I hope not to get comfortable because those years in the pressure cooker refine something in us that I think give us an edge. And I go and I probably the obviously the second act is great. I'm sorry to keep talking about Founders, but once you've listened to all second act episodes, go and start on Founders.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Just, and
plug.
the fact that
Yeah,
we're
of course.
mentioned in the same breath of the Founders
Yeah, no
podcast is
kidding.
awesome.
Like listening to stories of people that inspire you and that have accomplished something is so valuable. So I love second act for that reason. But I'm listening over here too and going, like through adversity, some of the greatest minds and some of the people who have accomplished the most come from that. And so I look and I go, okay, that was crazy. And I hate the losses that so many of us suffered. But at the same time, what that time gave us, I couldn't trade personally.
The journeyman that you are and your wife would you argue, putting some of the circumstances from your life so far aside, do you feel like you've been sort of wired that way from the beginning? Because I think about that, and because you mentioned getting comfortable and making sure that you don't get comfortable. Can you get comfortable, or are you wired to just continue to explore and experiment?
That's a fantastic question. I, because of my delusions of grandeur, think that I am one of the greats who can't get comfortable and who can't retire or whatever. I was listening to Jerry Jones yesterday, and he can't, like, it just, it never turn. I can turn off for a little bit. I can
Okay.
No, I can't. My mind doesn't unplug. I don't mind getting, but I can't turn the brain off. The reality is I have never actually been comfortable because of the, either a tumultuous home environment at times or the medical stuff, or because of 2020 or financial challenges, or because we're doing good with business but it's -20 outside, and so we got to figure out, how to work in that, whatever. It's not always cold in Alaska. We have these amazing summers, but yeah, I have always kind of had some underlying, drive or tension. And, even with this business, Kendall and I have now like a 2 and a 5 and a 10-year plan to continue to grow it. And we were driving by a property the other day, and she was like, I want to put like a lodge there. And I was like, yeah, we got to do that. Can we go get $10 million? So like, I think every time that we're feeling like something is clicking, we're like, what if we were to completely break this and try to double it and, push ourselves?
Nice.
And so even, I was talking about we're shooting like this, right now I shoot everything in 8K raw. Even if it's a small project, which is very expensive, it costs like $100 an hour to run our cameras and another $500 for every hard drive every time we shoot or whatever. And they're like, oh, some client budgets don't call for that. And I'm like, I don't give a rip about the client budget because this is future proofing my business, my relationship with this client. My small clients become 6-figure clients. And when I go and create with this, I'm, attracting the next level. So yeah, I think we try not to let ourselves get comfortable because there's always something else that if you train a little harder for and push a little harder for, that you can go and achieve. And I meet some people who are like, yeah, I'm good right where I am, and I just want to do that. And we're not. And I don't know if there's a threshold that we hit where we're like, yeah, this is good, or if we're just going to keep dreaming. But the last, 10 years of our history and our relationship suggests that we won't.
What I've heard you say, Colin, is, and keep me honest here, you like the sense of adventure and experimentation and taking yourself outside of the comfort zone, but you didn't mention anything about like some sort of mythical financial metric. Like it's nice to have money, but at the same time, I don't think that's your end state. Like there's things beyond just money that you bring you joy and adventure to your life. Would you agree with
Yeah,
that?
yeah, absolutely. I think money is and wealth. There are a couple reasons that I want to really develop wealth, and one of those is obviously freedom and opportunity to accomplish those things. Another is just to be able to pump that back into the community and the people around me, and the third is to pass that on generationally. I want to create wealth for our
Love it.
children. I want to give them opportunities that we didn't had because we came out of school and all that, but a bunch of debt. And I think, and I'm sure of this, that children can be raised with wealth to have a great work ethic and can learn how to manage money
Yep.
and all of these incredible things. So I want to do that. My joke, it took me 2.5 years to get Kendall on board with our relationship. We were friends for a while. So my joke is Kendall said she would never marry me. She said she would never live in a trailer. She said she would never have a dog. She said she would never be a boy mom. And I'm really happy that she has said we'll never be billionaires because she's batting really good on her nevers. So yeah, I don't have a specific number in mind.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely, as an entrepreneur, to grow a business, it has to make money, it has to be
course.
profitable, and I want to make money. But more so, I'm really, really grateful that every single morning I get up at like 4:30, I work for a couple hours, I get Milo up, and then I spend the next few hours with my family and we have breakfast together and we go out
There
and
you
we
go.
cross country ski together and all that type of stuff. And that's the metric for me. And if I lose that, then the business isn't working. So I would not choose an empire that required me to work all hours of
Awesome.
the day and night over what we have. But I think that it's really possible to create something crazy without killing yourself.
I agree.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
that's my next crazy idea, is that I hear of all these founders who have created incredible things and they worked themselves to death until they were 70. And maybe I won't, accomplish that level and I don't need to, but I'm going to look back and have done this with my family and with my friends and community and know that I invested the time. I had a really nice spread on that investment.
I love it.
Colin, I want to shift a little bit to the humorous side. My brother lives in a van and he travels around and he says, you pull up to these places and people are checking out his van and they're like, oh man, I'd love to do that. Man, what a dream. And he's like, well, people say that, but it's not as glamorous as sometimes you think it is. So tell me,
Yeah.
humorous side, living in an Airstream with your dog, your wife, and now a child. There's got to be some hard lessons learned in that.
Yeah. So two things. What's funny is 2020 turned living in a van down by the river from a like down and out situation
Yeah.
to a status symbol.
Yep. That's awesome.
All of a sudden it's like, how do you live down by the river in a van? Like,
Yeah.
what did you do to get there? It's hilarious. And, obviously there's just more and more, like, you never know. You see a Sprinter going down the road, that thing could have been $500,000 for the build they've got on it. But you are still, especially as a nomad, when you are like, spending years on the road. We met a lot of people who do this. There is you're looking for something humorous, but I just got to go to honest.
That could be
So
humorous too.
what's really cool is that, especially in Alaska, there's just so much public land and we do a lot of off-grid type of stuff. And so, when the kid and the dog, and you get tired of them, you put them outside. Our dog spends almost all of her time outside. She's a husky, so she can spend all of her time outside in the winter as well. And we're kind of in tight quarters, so it's funny. I joke that Kendall and I have lived together and built this business like in a tin can, and we're rolling around down the road and doing that. You have to find a rhythm, and you have to find points in your day and things that are meaningful to you that give you the anchor and the home base
That's good.
that you lose by not having, because we're pretty well wired to have a home base and a community and stuff like
Sure.
that. So we've had to be really intentional about building community in different locations, and then building like a rhythm and a routine into our day so that there are anchoring moments, especially for children, because they've got to have some degree of stability and of trust in
That's
their
interesting.
environment and
Yeah.
whatever. And if what's going on outside the window for him is changing a lot, then he's got to get up at the same time every day. And we've got to go through that same kind of morning routine. And if we change that, he asks,
That's good.
for whatever it is. Like he has a coloring time in the morning when we do devotions. He calls that babui. It's his word for crayon. And so if we don't do that, babui. So like his body knows and has. And so we tried to build those things. And the same with the dog. Like within the 30-minute range, if we're not going out for that morning walk, she's crying and antsy and moving
Sure.
around. And so all of that. So yeah, that's how we have dealt with that is kind of build that sense of rhythm in. And then yeah, there are moments when you kind of are like, am I homeless right now? Like, is that what's going on here? Especially in we've had some clients, some van builders that we work. So we've spent, I don't know, cumulative few months in a van. And the van can be more difficult because you do have to get in everywhere you go. And when you're at Target or whatever, like you are like your home is like you're living out of a car in that moment. When you're on top of a mountain, you're like, I'm living on a mountain. But so that's one thing we really like about the Airstream is we could set it up and we could create a base camp around it, put chairs outside, put a swing outside, stuff like that, and then feel like we're coming to home. So that's we've just had to learn how to do that.
Yeah, that's good, man. Community is such a big thing for all of us, right? My wife and I moved to Colorado Springs from Virginia for the community, and not for a job, not for things, not for, family. It was for the community that we had that was out here. But I can imagine traveling around and not having those constants of church and family or, favorite places you like to go or, people that you're constantly seeing. That's gotta be tiring and trying, but I imagine it's really strengthened your and Kendall's relationship, and I think you've probably made some pretty epic friends across the nation now as you guys have traveled, and so is that something that's evolved over time as well?
Yeah, especially now that we're really, really, specific to Alaska. We've got 5 or 6 places around the state where we've got some roots down. So we're typically around people that we know and like. When we were in the Southwest and, moving, all over, that was a little more just us. So at this point, there are, a few churches and groups of people and different things like that. And, we know we're gonna have dinner with this couple when we're down on the coast and whatever it is. But at the same time, we've developed a pretty tight little unit where, just us is, we're good with that and we're having fun with that. It has required a lot of intentionality to do marriage well, especially going through the financial stress of 2020 and the emotional stress of 2020 and the years following that and building a business and constantly kind of pushing ourselves to grow that and find a place for this business to be. We're trying to make it a one of one type of thing. The problem is when you have a one of one business, you have to create a market for that. So just all the learning there. So we have stayed plugged in and had a counselor that we've met with at least quarterly, if not monthly, for years. And had to do the hard work. Like you can't cold shoulder. You can't go into another room, like whatever. Like we just don't let things linger.
Yep.
So like you're right there. Sometimes you got to go outside and get moving and go for a walk or whatever it is. So yeah, I think it's created like a lot of resilience in our relationship and in our parenting now. that just frankly, like you got to work through. But I think a lot of people work through at year 15 rather than years 3 to 5 because you can coast through so much of life, especially if you have 9 to 5 jobs and you got the kids and the friends and whatever. There's so many different times that you can kind of like let that one go, and that's not the case with us. You kind of just got to figure it out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I can imagine. I mean, my wife and I have a policy of never going to bed angry at each other, and that can be difficult at times and create some late nights, but I imagine it has strengthened you guys beyond anything else that you guys have done. And what a story. I'm thinking about the adaptability and the resilience that you guys have gone through from COVID and being in an Airstream and your marriage and moving communities. And you guys just have such an experience that is unmatched by anybody else. And it's such a great story that I'm just, it's really cool to hear your attitude, and the sky is the limit for you. You're still growing and moving, and that's really refreshing, I think.
Yeah, it's cool. It's been like I look back and I go, man, like what a privilege to have done all this. And so kind of on that note, when you zoom that out, then I go, okay, like great privilege, great responsibility. And one of our North Stars is not just to, build something for ourselves, but to really inspire people. And so that's part of, sharing our story and talking about these things and creating and all that stuff the way that we do is, hopefully someone else can look at this and go, man, okay, I can do something really challenging, or, my crazy idea could have some merit as well. And we get those messages. Kendall has a pretty decent Instagram following, and we've never commercialized her Instagram. It's always been her story. And then, I've developed a LinkedIn following now, and all I do is commercialize it, but that's okay. But we hear from people that we have inspired them, and that we come back. And so the money is one thing, but those moments where someone, as you guys being in the line of work that you are too, I'm sure you get.
Oh yeah.
Those moments kind of solidify it, and they'll put fuel in your tank for a year.
Sure.
Over whatever accomplishments.
Yeah, I just shared one, Colin, with John and Jeremy that we received via our Instagram account about someone who sort of like mid-career decided to pivot into something totally different, and they're drawing inspiration and energy from the content and the stories that people are sharing through the second act, and that's the fuel for the tank. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you ever? I just watched before we started recording. I watched your video on the Celsius advertisement. Do you ever watch those and you think, "Holy cow, this is awesome! This is awesome opportunity." Are you just in awe of what you've done?
Yeah. It's funny. There are stages of it.
Yeah.
So like I was just out yesterday filming a bunch of air-to-air footage of a helicopter, and so like right before this, and like putting together a little teaser, and I've got a drone. I've got a helicopter at 75 feet and the drone 100 feet above that, and we're flying over these insane, couple 100-foot like spires of ice in the blue and all that. And yeah, I was sitting there just going like, okay, this is crazy. Like, I love that I get to do this. And then, with the Celsius one, like I've just because we're in post and we're, looking at tones of the blue, and then we're looking at skin tones and transitions and all that. I've watched it 250 times. And I come back and I'm like, oh, that's crazy. And then there's other times where I'm just like, oh yeah, I intentionally try to pinch myself on stuff like that and go,
sure.
okay, this is absolutely wild. But then, there's just moments where I'll catch myself just realizing, oh, this feels normal. And an example of that yesterday was we are in the helicopter coming back from a shoot talking, and we're coordinating with other traffic because there's some heli ski operations going on. And our pilot is like, oh yeah, like look for that A-star, whatever. And we're talking about how he's like, man, it's like rough that they have to fly out to this other mountain range because we've had a weird year for snow and all. And he was like, yeah, we got. And somehow he didn't know this, but we've talked to some of these lodges, and he was like, that's just like they gotta like get a lot of flight hours in to be profitable. And I'm like, oh yeah, the people who come in, they buy a minimum of $100,000 of flight time for the week for their ski, and then they use it or don't. But the operator's getting that. And so they, got 50 people coming, whatever. He was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And we're just talking through, like, it's very, very normal that we're both in helicopters flying around in the mountains talking about people buying $100,000 of flight time. And afterwards, I was just like, we had no sense of like just incredulity about that conversation. What just like how crazy, and we're not spending that on our flight time. But I was just like, hold up. We're like talking about like helicopters in Alaska and skiing down mountains and all this kind of stuff. And like just think for a moment like how crazy this community and this life that you're a part of and all that is. And don't forget what like an incredible privilege that is. And it's something that we're working to build and we get to be a part of. And so, yeah, those moments, I just had to stop and go, nope, like that was that was like an absolutely crazy moment that we're talking about this rather than just like that's normal and forget about it. And still, even now, like if someone else will feel like I might be out of touch talking like that. But yeah, it kind of is our life and it is what we do. So I look at that and that just feels like home to me and what we did last Wednesday. And then I have this part of me that can kind of see it with fresh eyes and go, oh, that's pretty cool.
Sure.
I'm grateful for this.
Well, can you share with our listeners anything that's exciting coming up and for them to be on the lookout for from you and your wife?
Yeah, I think what I'm really excited about is, with our work is that we are finding just more and more ways to kind of branch out of. You would expect me to work with tourism and with cruise lines and with Patagonia and the North Face and whatever. And I'll, have an ad out that we're doing for like an accounting software. And so I'm
And the
having all
second
these
act.
conversations in, yeah. And the second act, like I'm just having these conversations where I'm connecting with creative thinkers who are willing to just go, let's come totally out of left field here.
I love it.
And, find the purple cow effect type of a thing. And so that's exciting for me. I think there's a lot happening around AI. We might be going into another .com situation, but if I can ride the wave up, then I'll navigate it from there.
Exactly.
There's a lot happening there. There's as Bezos calls it, it's like a thin horizontal enabling line, like electricity was and like the internet was across all industries, across all verticals that you can build on top of. And so I'm excited because we're getting involved in creating the stories and content around
That's
that.
cool.
And I always just believe in like going back and not just showing the product, but the human element of it and making people laugh, making people cry. And so more of our films are going to be stuff that you just didn't expect. There's one that Brand has asked me not to talk too much more about until we've accomplished it, but we're doing this insane shoot out on a glacier where we have to carry this product and cast it and all of that. So yeah, I think what's fun is that what we're doing is just not I think everything I'm producing and that I have in the pipeline right now is just not what you would expect to see. So it's going to kind of make you think and laugh and go, oh, like that's a creative idea, hopefully. And I'm connecting with, really great creative thinkers that are helping us kind of refine those ideas. So maybe that's a bit ambiguous, but that's what I like. And then personally, we're 5 or 6 weeks out maybe from having a little girl.
Oh
So
man.
Nice.
6
so yeah,
weeks. That's
I'm
crazy.
Yeah.
yeah, it is. It's crazy. So that's bigger and that's more important and that's taking up more and more kind of like mental and emotional bandwidth in a really good way. But it also like it drives you, it fuels, being excellent across those other
Yeah.
things because I'm like, I got a son and now I got a little girl and I don't know what that feels like, but
You have to get a
I
bigger
think it will
Airstream.
be. Yeah, it is in just 2 weeks now getting gutted and renovated with a little bunk room in the back, but
Okay.
we'll have to get something bigger, and we are probably buying a house or building something fairly soon here as
Cool.
our home base. Will continue to be nomadic, but yeah, thinking about that. But it'll work for this little phase here.
Amazing.
So,
Yeah.
Collin, you help these companies with these big brand ideas realize their purple cow visions in all of the work that you do. But a lot of our audience is just contemplating or getting started on their second act. There's definitely people
Yeah.
who are into it, but there's definitely
Yeah.
a lot of people who they want to do it and they just need some help. So if we can just rein in that a little bit and leave our audience with some practical advice from your perspective and your journey and your adventure that got you to where you are, what practical advice or insights could you give them as we bring things to a close here?
Yeah, I think getting outside of specifically what we do and more into the mindset and heart set of going into your second act. I think especially if you have, you know, woken up in the middle of your life and all of a sudden realized, man, I've burned some time that I wish I hadn't burned, or I don't want to, continue on this path. Just do a quick audit on, where you're spending your time and what things are valuable to you versus where you're dreaming about and what you're writing down and kind of where your mind goes. And, see what beliefs maybe underlie those behaviors. And if it's a belief that, certainty are what matters, or a W-2, or this is, the thing I was supposed to do, or whatever, like I would go and also sit down and see like what your belief in yourself looks like. And listening to stories like this, I think you're pretty well at the tipping point where you're starting to get this, this fire. You're uncomfortable and, ready to make a change. I would say like absolutely believe in yourself, and then go and listen to great stories and go and find other people who have done the same, and become encouraged by that. And also, I would say, and I don't know how practical any of this is, because that's like it's just maybe super top level, but it really comes down to like, choosing to do it and believing yourself. If you are not there yet and you're just taking and you're listening to this, and there's so many factors in your life, like, the kids are from, middle school into high school, and I can't shake things up right now, or my wife or my family, or I've just started taking care of my parents, or a million different things. Give yourself a break if it's not right now and you've got to burn a little more time. There will come a point where the pain of staying the same is more than the pain of the change. And you will know. And it doesn't mean you're making a mistake. It doesn't, that's an axiom in addiction and in like AA. But at the same time, sometimes in life. And so I would say, for someone who's just got a million different like little things, like keep writing down the things that you want to do. Keep figuring out what you believe in yourself to do. Keep figuring out what's holding you back. And if it's very real logistical things, then like take care of those things. But I think if you keep listening to stuff like this, and you just kind of wire yourself, because there's some deep work you have to do to kind of rewire to think that way, and trust yourself to get there, then that moment will reveal itself. Because there's never the right time for anything. So, you can analyze things to the nth degree, and just depending on how you want to weight your pro con list, choose to jump or to not. And it's going to come down to intuition. And if it takes a little bit of time to develop that, then I would say that's totally okay. And if you're ready to go, then I would say bet on yourself. I bet on myself, and that's the one kind of variable that I have a little more control over. And I've won so far, and I bet you will too if you're ready to do that. So I
Awesome.
don't feel like that was practical at all, but maybe
No,
it's
it
helpful.
was perfect.
Nailed it. Well, Colin, I've already reached out on LinkedIn. I want to follow you. But for everyone else that wants to see your work or wants to connect with you on just a more intimate level, or wants to seek your advice for advertising or just get connected, how is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I'm assuming there will be some kind of link in this podcast here.
Absolutely.
So my LinkedIn, search Collin. Looks like Strachan. It's Strawn. You just toss out the middle. You go to Google and you do like Collin Strachan, Alaska photographer, whatever it is. Look up Every Mile Creative, Alaskan Production Company, alaskaproductioncompany.com. Whatever. You could find me, and it's all linked together. But my name, and then there's also Kendall Strachan. She's got a big Instagram following, so follow one of those. But if you've got the spelling of my name from this podcast, then you'll find us easily. But yeah, send me a connection request on LinkedIn. Send me a message, follow whatever it is. Sometimes I get overwhelmed with my inbox and it takes some time, but I do get to everyone in there. I'll set aside a day for myself and just spend time with people. So would love to connect. And yeah, if you want to work together, then come through the website, come through LinkedIn or whatever, and we just do, I open time for anyone who just wants to connect and chat. So if you have something about believe in yourself, whatever, there's a chat with Collin. I can hook you up. And, with brands that want to strategize, I'm more than happy. If you think, man, I'd love to find an edge or do something adventurous or funny or crazy, and I just have no idea how to connect the dots because I'm in manufacturing. It's the most boring thing ever. Like, let's chat for an hour and I will listen to you and hear your brand and hear like why people buy from you and why they should buy over your competitors and all that. And then I'll go and spend a week on it and come back to you with some concepts that are fun, and all of that is for free. So yeah, if you want to work with us, that's how we work, and it's a fun collaborative process.
I
And
love
the
it.
website is everymilecreative.com. Yes.
Yeah, everymillecreative.com. If you put that in, I recently, for SEO reasons, bought alaskaproductioncompany.com.
Okay.
So Every Mile Creative will reroute to that.
Okay.
But however
Perfect.
however you Google it,
Yep.
it'll come up. But yeah.
Awesome. Collin, this has been such a fun episode to do with
It
you.
has.
I've told you via email that you have a soon-to-be in-person visitor to Alaska. You've convinced me and my family to plan a trip up there in the not-too-distant future, so it's happening.
Come on up,
You
man.
may have 2 visitors because my son is begging me to take him this summer or fall he turns 13. And I
Nice.
promised each of my boys a trip on their own when they turn 13 with me, and they've got to navigate and figure out what we're doing. So my oldest right now his heart is set on Alaska, so you may be seeing us sooner than later.
Cool. That'll be that'll be a life-changing trip there. You're gonna get him hooked.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Cool. Well, it's great to meet you
Yeah.
Yeah,
guys.
Collin.
Thanks for this time.
Yeah, sounds like we beat the helicopter, but
Yeah.
man, thank you so much.
Yeah, I
for
don't
your
know where
time.
he's at, but anyway,
Those
he'll be around soon.
helicopter pilots, they're unreliable.
Unreliable.
They are.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. He just
Uh,
thinks he's on beach time or something like that.
Probably true.
On island time.
Probably true. Well, hey, have an amazing day, and thank you so much for sharing your story with Michael
awesome.
and I and our group. And man, we just look forward to watching what you guys produce in the future, and really just appreciate it.
Of course. Great to meet you guys. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.
The Second Act with Michael and John stars Michael Newborn and John Ballinger. The podcast is produced by Seltzer Kings. For more information on the show, check out michaelandjohn.com, or if you'd like to get involved in the conversation, give the guys a shout on their socials at The Second Act Movement on most platforms. Thanks for listening.
Seltzer Kings.
Podcasts.